My mistake. Excuse me. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda sequence?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Dr. Patel, second by Mr. O'Connor-Ratcliff. Any further discussion?
Yes, I would like to remove item 8.1 from the docket and delay its discussion until we can have the other two tentative agreements brought before the board so we can consider them all at the same time, particularly for fiscal reasons, so that we can look at the broad cumulative fiscal impact of all three contracts at the same time.
I will second that for the reasons elucidated by Mr. Sellers, as well as to add the opportunity for the board to prioritize the safety and welfare of our students prior to this action.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to remove one item from the agenda, item 8.1. Discussion. It's the, I'm sorry, for the benefit of the public, 8.1 is the action on their personnel support services ratification of the Poway Federation of Teachers tentative agreement for 2017-2018. Mr. O'Connor-Ratcliff.
I am opposed to pulling it. We have it here. To wait until another unit might approve their TA. We don't know for sure when they're going to do it. We have this one now. I'd like to consider it now, and we have no guarantees that any of the other ones are going to be approved by the membership of those unions. Let's consider this one now.
Yeah, I don't personally see how this jeopardizes student safety approving a teacher tentative agreement. We've done all the prep on this, and I don't see the benefit of moving it forward to the next meeting.
So just to clarify that point, the proposed allocation is $13.5 million. So with reference to the student safety, we just want to assure while we're continuing to run structural deficits, and this will add significantly to our structural deficit. As the board had discussed in our previous workshop, it's imperative that we ensure first and foremost that our students are safe, that we have proper adequate resource officers at the school site, that we have adequate staff on site to be there to support the students, as well as the students enunciated so well at the last board meeting, ensuring that we have allocated sufficient funds for additional counselors at all the levels. And I think also to clarify Mr. Sellers' point was, I think that what he was saying was it's very likely that it's one other bargaining unit that is going to have additional raises, as well as very likely the management staff there will also be a request to approve those raises as well. And I believe what Mr. Sellers is expressing is that it's important for the board to understand the totality of the financial impact of the entirety of the raises as well as the bonuses before acting, that would be fiscally prudent. And then to my point, that it would also be wise for the board to make sure that we are putting our students first.
I think it's not just the board that needs to see this. I think it's the public. I think the public needs to see that, okay, one group's, being proposed to 2.5% permanent ongoing raise, and the next group will be proposed that, and the next group after that. And I think the public deserves to see what the cost of that is in totality, what the choices being made are, the priorities that are being assigned as a result of that, and whether or not they're comfortable with it, express their opinions, and hold their elected members accountable for those decisions.
All right, thank you. Mr. O'Connor-Ratcliff?
I would disagree wholeheartedly with everything that Mr. Sellers and Ms. Beatty said, including the characterization of any of this as contributing to a structural deficit, and I look forward to a robust conversation when we get to the agenda item. I don't think by addressing the one we have before us now and waiting until we actually have something before us for the other units, denies the public any conversation. That conversation will happen, whether now or next month or in July. We have no guarantee that we're going to have anything from the other units. We need to take these as they come, and we have one here. I look forward to discussing it tonight.
I appreciate Mr. Sellers and Ms. Beatty's comments with regard to the big overall picture, financial picture for the district. This is why we discussed some of these items at our recent budgetary workshop, as you aptly pointed out. I'm also mindful of the fact that 1,224 PFT members voted to support this tentative agreement. Only 2 voted against it. And so I'm prepared to vote on it this evening. It's been out there, it's been discussed, and we can discuss it more when the agenda item comes up later. There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the item? There's a motion been made to pull item 8.1 from the agenda. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Nay? Nay. Okay, the record reflect Ms. Beatty and Mr. Sellers in favor of the motion, Mr. O'Connor-Ratcliff, Dr. Patel, and myself opposed. Ratification of Poway Federation of Teachers tentative agreement for 2017-2018. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Zane. Our Board of Trustees this evening is asked to consider the tentative agreement negotiated between the Poway Unified School District and the Poway Federation of Teachers. On April 25th and April 26th, the Poway Federation of Teachers ratified the tentative agreement with a total vote of 1,224 yes votes and 2 votes against. It was overwhelmingly passed by the membership of PFT. This agreement was reached through the collaborative process of interest-based problem solving. This agreement would close out negotiations and the contract for 2016 and 17 and the 2017-18 school years. The parties are committed to continuing the IBPS process in the upcoming year for a successor agreement. This tentative agreement before you includes a 2.5% ongoing salary wage increase effective July 1st, 2018. In addition, it includes a 3% one-time off-schedule payment for the 2017-2018 school year. The cost of this agreement ongoing would be $3,857,144, and the one-time payment in 2017 and 18 would total $4,628,573. The documents attached to the green sheet include the disclosures, the AB 1200 submitted to the County Office of Education, which was approved. Are there any questions from our trustees?
Mr. O'Connor-Ratcliff.
No questions. I was just going to, if you're ready for a motion to approve.
Second. Discussion.
I'd love to start with a quick shout out to our governor and legislature for prioritizing schools just a little bit this time around to ensure our new ongoing LCFF money that we needed to make this a fiscally responsible decision. We know we have the money to do with this right now. We know we must do this to recruit and retain our best teachers. So thank you to the IBPS team for your hard work. James and Marion and Kelly is out there somewhere. Yeah. The part that I'm actually the most pleased with in this whole agreement is near the end, where we agree to develop and implement a new fair share formula together. The new leadership in PFT and the new leadership in the district makes this so important to ensure that we're all on the same page. I think some of our issues have been misunderstandings over what that means, and now we have this chance to get on the same page and speak the same language, develop some trust again in our IBPS process, and maybe reinvigorate it again so that the parties can get into it. I guess I'll stop there and let everybody else have a chance.
Mr. Sellers.
I don't want to belabor this point. It's late. Everyone's tired. But I'm not going to support this agreement because we can't afford it. It's an $8 million immediate hit, a nearly $4 million ongoing hit to the budget. I mean, the much touted SERP that we just passed is going to save us $500,000 a year if it works out. over 5 years. We have many needs in this district. A lot of them were trotted out in front of us tonight. Agricultural education, dyslexia, student safety. And this agreement sets the stage for ones to follow. We already have a tentative agreement that's been signed between PSEA, it's 2 units, and the district that will be coming to us in June. APSM's contract will mirror this, and it will come on the heels of that. These are all things that, much as we'd like to give them, I really don't think we can afford it, and I think the monies are better spent on other priorities. It's really that simple.
Anyone else? Ms. Beatty?
I can't support this because, well, I have about 25 reasons why, but I will try to keep it down to about 10. We need to put our students first. That's the job of the board. The board's job is to first allocate our resources towards our student needs, and we've seen what they are, what they currently are tonight and in previous months. First, student safety. You can't do that student safety on the cheap. That requires hiring staff, additional staff on school sites. Our students 1 month ago begged, pleaded, asked, cried for more counselors so we could reduce the ratio of counselors to students, which is one of the worst in the nation. And they said, prevention before intervention. We've received letters from students from Meadowbrook. They're asking for more counselors, more safety programs, more arts programs. The agricultural program, while it was great, it was able to be restored. That needs to be maintained year over year. The Pathway program, we're at the tail end of a 3-year career technical education pathway grant funded program. Now that those grants are exhausted, the district is we're going to have to find it in our operational budget to sustain this program. That takes money, this one and others. It'd be nice if we could actually expand it in addition. We have been running structural deficits for several years. We had the good fortune, because of additional funds in the state coffers, to have our full funding paid for 2 years in advance. Just like the state did, we should have put it in a rainy day fund, because at this point our revenues are flatlining and our expenses will be going up. In a few years, our pension liability will increase another $10 million to $45 million, which is about 12% of our budget. That's tripling of what our pension liability was just a few years ago. This money also takes out from what's called the OPEB account, the post-retirement medical account for our staff. The board has been advised that that account's underfunded. It's not where it should be. So it's fiscally irresponsible to dip into that fund to the extent that we have, that the district's on the hook for those payments, and we need to make sure that there's enough funding in that pot. As I said, our students need to come first, and we need to have some balance. We need to make sure that we're prioritizing some of the greatest needs that we're facing, some of the greatest challenges we're facing now with regard to student safety, with regard to mental health issues that are on the increase. and I don't see us doing that. And then, lastly, I did have an issue with the process. The board, ultimately, the board is the decider for how funds are allocated and whether or not compensation will be increased. And the board gave direction, and that wasn't followed. And I have a problem with that too, because this board needs to recognize its authority, its statutory authority, as codified in our state law, that ultimately the board must determine the priorities of the students on behalf of the community, because we're the community's representatives. And the problem is that there are some squeaky wheels, and we need to figure out a way to overcome that to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Dr. Patel.
So first of all, I do support this this action as presented. I'm very impressed that after several years and several superintendents, we finally do have a contract in place, and it does allow for, as Ms. O'Connor-Ratcliff stated, to revisit the fair share formula that's kind of been hanging over us for a while. And since we have all new team players in the room now, it's very important that we get a good understanding, a fundamental understanding of what that fair share is and how that formula works. So I thought that was excellent that that was put in that agreement, and kudos to the whole team for coming to the table on that. We discussed a lot of these items in the budget board workshop, and for those of you who were there, we covered a lot of this stuff. And the bottom line was we can't afford this. And the one-time bonus comes from one-time funds. And a lot of those one-time funds are supposed to go directly to teachers. There's no greater impact on student outcomes than teachers. And if we can't recruit, retain, and properly train those teachers and get them motivated to do innovative programs and to be there for our students every day, all day, all the time, then we're going to have a significant problem in this district. I think this is a very important step. And in that budget, we discussed how we're going to address safety and counseling and all the other needs as well. So I do support this, and I support giving a little back to our staff as we get our budget increases from the governor, and as there's more on the table in our state legislature. I think we'll be able to work out the PERS and STIRS as well. It doesn't only affect our school district, it affects municipalities up and down the state. Every single municipal employee, state employee, is dealing with this problem, and there will be a larger fix to it. There has to be. Otherwise, the whole state of public servants it'll become insolvent. But I would like to direct a question directly to Mr. Little. There was a comment, and now I'm blanking on it exactly, that about OPEB. Can you please clarify that and whether it's underfunded?
I don't recall I mean, I've heard Trustee Beatty's comment, obviously, but I don't recall. I'm trying to remember the last actuarial study. I don't recall a statement as such that we were underfunded with respect to our OPEB liability. I think the fact is, because our OPEB funds are not in an irrevocable trust, they cannot be counted against the liability. So the assets are not recognized against liability as per GASB 43 and 45. That's probably what the actuary was talking about, I would surmise.
So certainly it would be best practice to eventually put that into a locked fund, but for now it is accessible to the teachers and they can allocate it as they wish.
It's accessible to the district,
Okay.
their district funds. They're compartmentalized in Fund 67 by bargaining unit, as they have contributed those funds into that fund. That's a lot of funds.
Sure.
That is getting late. So we have language in our agreements. Should I stop? Okay, I'll stop.
I just want to say, Thank you to Mr. Jimenez and the negotiating team and others involved with this. I know it was quite a process to get us to the point where we're finally closing out 2 years. It's taken longer than it should have. There was other things, obviously, that we as a district were dealing with. I do believe that we are in a position where we can do this. This was covered in our board workshop. We are funding LCAP priorities. We will continue conversations about funding the items that have come forward through public comment and the board expressed priorities that were given in that budget workshop. And so I appreciate the negotiating team following through what I believe to have been board direction. And I support this. I can't overstate, and it will echo the importance of coming to a new agreement, if you will, on what the fair share is. That's always been a little point of contention between the negotiators from the administration side and the PFT bargaining unit. And with everybody, new people at the table, it's really important to get to understanding what that number really is going to be moving forward, that formula, what it's going to be moving forward. So with that, there is a motion and a second. And we'll take one more comment.
I've been at this a long time, and I must admit that to say that you're confident that the state just has to take care of the STRS and PERS problem, that's just got to happen, that's one of the most Pollyanna-esque statements I've heard, because there is nothing in recent history or in current proposal that suggests that will happen. There's also a perception, I won't go into detail about who fosters it, but there's a perception that teachers are underpaid. And that's a very broad statement. And it's important to note that this is not Kentucky. This is not Oklahoma. California has the second highest average teacher compensation in the country. Poway's average teacher compensation is higher than the state average. Yet, California, as we know, is down in the 40s in per pupil funding. Now, I'm not going to defend that, but it does mean that we spend a greater proportion of our per pupil funding on teacher salaries than any other state in the country. That cannot go on, and us keep our doors open. And so the concept that somehow, that we are not compensating our teachers fairly, and that we have to continue these raises in order to keep hiring them, I think is a misnomer and a fallacy.
One thing's for sure, we're not Kentucky. Grateful that our bargaining unit is agreeing to 2.5%, where some districts elsewhere are striking if they don't get 8 or 9%. And California has got this grand PERB board that I contend, if we didn't come to what I believe this is, a reasonable agreement, and the bargaining unit were to opt to say, well, we disagree, we declare impasse, we want to take it to the PERB panel or judge, that the judge would look at our district finances and say, you know what, you can afford far more than 2.5% and award it to them. So again, with considering the fact that 1,224 members of PFT voted in favor of this, 2 against, the budgetary workshop as it was, the numbers as they were laid out, I'm comfortable supporting this moving forward, and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay. Motion carries. In the affirmative, Mr. O'Connor-Ratcliff, Dr. Patel, and myself. In the negative, Mr. Sellers and Ms. Beatty. Thank you.